Hello there. You know, for traveling futurists like me, there are two types of people. There are people that are open and interested in the future and what it opens to us. And then there are people that are connected, sometimes too much, into the past. Now the problem with Vladimir Putin is the problem that he's all too connected to the distant past. The past which no longer exists, but only in his images. And that has brought the whole world to realize that it is really dangerous to be too much connected to the past, which you cannot take back. You cannot unwove the ways that the future appears to the societies, because societies move forward anyway. Our society today is fundamentally different to what was Soviet Union or our whole world in the 50 years from now. Yet we see that he wants to take us back into that time of the past. And because he has a lot of power and a lot of money, he had decided that he will gear us into that past, whatever it costs, because he's very much obsessed about himself. When you are obsessed and you have a high self-interest, you don't really think about the implication to the others in any of your actions. You just care about your own future, basically. And you want to secure that with whatever price it comes. So this is exactly what we unfortunately are seeing right now happening. The unfortunate thing is also that Russia, in its long history, has had a very short periods where people have been truly free to choose. They have been always imposed with their ideas that they have to comply, which quite often has been very far away from their true desires and interests. And so is today. When I'm talking about the Putin and what he has done to Ukraine, I'm not talking about the Russian people. Russian people, unfortunately, because of this tradition, they're just following, not all of them, but some of them are following, because they think that this guy represents the future for them. Now, we know pretty well now that he doesn't do that, but he claims to do that. It's like a paradise syndrome. He wants to bring back the paradise, which actually never was, but he has painted that picture. Now, what can you do about this? What can you do about when the man who has enormous powers has decided to bring not only his society, but a lot of other societies into the past? Well, basically, you need to show him that we are not living in that past world anymore. We are not supporting to bring us there. And that means that we need to start to make him reality, make him to understand that he is actually detached from the reality. Instead, he has created his own reality, which is like, okay, if you are an everyday guy, that might be good just to think whatever you are. You are Prince of Gabon, King of South Africa. But when you are in that type of a position, responsible position like Putin, it's devastating. Now his fixation is now that Ukraine is a part of Russia, which is of course very much far away from the truth if you look at the history. That's the most of the time, people have living in the areas of Ukraine, they have not been directly under any type of the control from the Russia. So that simply does not fit with the historical facts. But secondly, and most importantly, of course, the fact is that today people want to define, if possible, themselves in what type of the societies they are living. They don't want anyone to come from outside that, hey, live this way, have this type of the system. They want to define themselves. And this is exactly what the Ukrainians are doing. Now, because of these very unfortunate events that we have been seeing in the last week, we have come to realize that the world can still unite under one thing, and it is that we can still unite in facing this type of oppression that Putin actually pushes on Ukrainian people and society. So it's interesting to note that it's kind of uniting us to think that, hey, we need a different kind of the future, and we cannot let this guy to define our future. Again, something representative which is happening our time, because once you have awareness that it is you who define who you want to be future, what type of the society you want to live in, you don't want to go back to the time when someone else is defining that thing, that very important thing in your life for you. Again, this using of the force never gets you the future. Whether it's about the Putin, whether it's about your own life, whether it's about anything, force doesn't help, because future comes with ease. And this is what Putin has never understood. Now, when he came to the power in the late 90s, he was talking about that, well, he will support the democracy and human rights, and indeed, there was a talk that Russia will become a part of the European Union, and we could be all a part of this European family to which belong. As we see, he has drifted from those ideas very long time ago, and with a very drastic implications. So what I'm thinking about is that it's a wake-up call for all of us in whatever societies we are growing and in which we are part of, to think about that, do we have the rights to determine for ourselves the society in which we want to live? Because astonishing truth is that once we have given that liberty, we all want basically same things. We want to accept that the other one is different to us. We want to appreciate that we like our neighbors, and we are doing collectively things, and we are given the freedom, but also that we have a lot of responsibilities, because the freedom and responsibility are always kind of a twin sisters. So it is to call for us to think about that, and seeing that if we are far away from that, or even a short way from that type of the society, that's where we need to be pushing us. I'm not thanking Putin for that, because he's doing terrible things in Ukraine and making a lot of devastation and sacrificing human lives. But if there is any good coming out of that, it is to make us to think that we human beings have to be always respecting the differences of other people, other societies, other types of interests, just because when we do that, we are not doing a harm to each other. If we do that in the good spirit, and this creating this good spirit around our societies, which has been a kind of a long way, how we come this far, that it's almost like unthinkable to think that in the European continent, we have war as we have now. It has become unthinkable, and yet it happened. Hopefully the very last time, because it was only 70, 80 years ago, in the times of the Stalin and Hitler and others, that was the last time that we have this type of the devastation here. And Now, from there, and of course we need to remember that Balkan was very, very conflictual back in the 1990s. But we need to understand that now the time is very different. The very fact that Putin doesn't understand, we are much more connected. We have much more capacity to think for ourselves. We are much more educated to learn about what's going on in the world, what are the true challenges in the world. And that is what Putin has never understood. So please stand up and say to in your respective societies that, hey, if there is a way that we can move into the future, which we are easy to connect, and we liberate ourselves from the control systems that are harmful, but bearing the responsibility that we kind of, as a human beings, naturally want to bear and be a part of, to bring those kind of elements into our society to make it truly flourishing. And here, as I am among the nature, the biggest conflict is, of course, what do we do with our nature? What do we do with our natural environment? And that is also one thing what Putin wants to think about now, because he's like a fox, so he's very clever in one way. So he thinks that this is his last moment to be impactful, because the future of the oil looks very bleak. Now he thinks that he's very powerful because Europe is so much hinging on this oil, gas, and comes from Russia. It's going to be very different from 10 to 15 years. It has to be very different for many reasons. So he saw probably here his last moment, but we need to be telling him that, you know, your moment was long time gone. Your moment was actually then when you were still thinking freely and openly about the future and taking seriously the rights and the freedoms of the people. Thank you for listening, and please follow my YouTube channel. There's gonna be a lot of stuff coming. And please also provide your comments. Give me a shot. What do you think about? And I would be happy to start a conversation with any of you and all of you. Thank you very much.